listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 220. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade, and joining me is our editor-in-chief, Erik Anderson.
Hello.
Our associate editor, Sophia Ciminello.
Hi, everyone.
And our wonderful contributor, Josh Parham.
Hello, hello.
We are here to talk about the SAG Awards that were last night. And all of the chaos and the weird shit that happened and things that we liked about it, things that we want completely changed by next year's ceremony. And we'll talk about those winners. But before we get into the SAG Awards and all their glory, there was a little movie that most of us got to see this week, a little bit ahead of time. And we just wanted to give some initial thoughts because next week's show will be our final predictions episode, and we will not have a chance to talk about it or give a little bit of context to it before its release, and that is Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. Erik, you were able to see it this past week, so was I. I had the review up on the website, but I'll kick it over to you first, Erik. What were your thoughts? Just a quick initial reactions to seeing the first big film of the 2024 slate.
I really liked it, especially for a middle film and one as long as it is. Despite maybe like a dozen complaints I could rattle off about it that seemed really strange, I was really entertained the whole time. I don't think, though, it really surpasses the opening sequence of the film. The opening sequence is so incredible and richly colored and saturated and is really just kind of full of marvel. And then it rests back into, kind of a sandy dune look and feel about it. So that was a little disappointing because I thought we were getting maybe a slightly different type of film, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I have the review up on the website. I'm very mixed on it. On the first viewing of it, I saw over the last 2 weeks the initial reactions to it, and maybe it was a sense of hype or comparisons that I just don't consider correct. But I was a big fan of the first film. Sophia and Josh and Erik know that. And for just some reason, it did not feel the sense of urgency. It did not feel the sense of the right words is a sense of effort that was put into this one that it was in the first go round. And I wasn't as wowed or awe-inspired by most of the visuals. And I thought the script was lacking much more here than it was in the first. And the performance and some performances that I loved were not on screen enough. And other performances were undercooked and underdeveloped. And, we will have a full actual episode of Director Watch to hear my full thoughts on it because I'm going to try to see it again before that episode records. And I know, Josh, you haven't seen it yet, right? You haven't had a chance to see it, or have you had a chance to see it yet?
Not yet. I actually will be seeing it tomorrow. So
okay.
Very, very soon. I haven't seen the movie yet. I did, however, go to see Tenet again in IMAX.
Hell yeah.
And before they played it, they showed a little snippet of Dune Part 2, kind of like an extended sequence to it. So it looks, like a good movie. I am excited for it.
Yeah. Sophia, I know you're seeing it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a special fan event in IMAX screenings tonight. And which is funny and very ironic of a fan screening for you to go to when you were not particularly a fan of the first film. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm going for the popcorn bucket because supplies are limited.
You do have to. She is actually on alert to go and get me one, even though I didn't care for the film. Like, come on, you got to get the bucket.
Like I told you, it's going to be very funny when I'm going home after the screening on the subway, just carrying 2 Dune popcorn buckets.
To be fair, I did tell this to my wife earlier in the week, and Megan said that it will not be the weirdest thing that's on a New York subway on your way home, probably, that you'll
close.
see. Yeah, it was like, I want to be in top 10, so I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, in all seriousness, though, like for this movie, I am excited for it because one of the reasons why I didn't really care for the first film is that I didn't really feel like Villeneuve understood the complexities of the characters in Herbert's novel. I read that book the summer before the movie came out, and I remember just being really floored by it. It was it's a tough book to make it through. It's very dense, and there are a lot of different thematic complexities to it, and the characters I think are really what make it. And when I think of Denis Villeneuve, I don't think of a director who is really great at character development. And I think that the first movie really just feels kind of like a pilot of a really expensive TV show to me. So I'm looking forward to part two because I think that's where the meat is of in the book. Like I'm ready for all of the religious fanaticism and the themes around that and being introduced to some of the new characters. So I am really looking forward to it. And I am curious. I think that one of the things that's difficult right now is that the hype is just sky high because people are comparing it to Lawrence of Arabia and The Godfather Part 2 and all of these movies. And I just need everyone to settle a little bit. But I was
I'll say
grateful
it.
for.
They need to shut the fuck up. Like, calm down.
Gosh.
Like, it's
Well,
getting ridiculous out there.
I was happy for your review that I felt was a really measured take. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll have full thoughts very soon.
I am
Yeah,
looking.
it's nothing like those two. Those are like pie in the sky kind of like I really
Yeah.
need a pull quote kind of comment.
That's some
Well,
Peter
that's-
Travers ass shit.
That's
right
the
there.
problem, I think, too, is like now we live in a world where it's just like people see a movie first and they need to tweet the most hyperbolic reaction possible just to get the pull quote or to get the likes or retweets. And it's just not always accurate or indicative of what the movie actually is.
I think
It definitely gets into the. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Erik.
It gets into the religious fanaticism part that you were talking about, Sophia. I think that's the biggest part.
Mm-hmm.
But insofar as the introduction of new characters, some of them feel like glorified cameos.
Oh no,
really,
I know.
In ways that you didn't really think were going to be. I know the more that I talk about it, the more I'll dislike it because I can pick away at the things that are not good.
Man,
people in it individually are really, really good. I just wish they had more time.
I think for me, and I put this in the review, and I strongly believe this, is that in trying to be so beholden to Herbert's novel, the originality from what a director could do with this property and elevate it beyond that and do their own things or take it into more cinematic ways. Villeneuve doesn't do that. And he instead is just making a direct, almost copy of the novel. From talking with yourself, Sophia, and talking with others that have read the book extensively, that's what we got here. And so I'm hoping for you and Josh, you're more on Erik's side of liking it, though Erik's more, it sounds like he's starting to become more of a mixed positive on it. But I do want to see it again because I did not see it in IMAX, and I want to see it on the big screen because I did see the first film twice on the big IMAX screen and presented in great sound and everything. But I did feel it kind of wash over me. And I was looking forward to it. I mean, I don't like to drive all the way, I don't like drive 2 hours away from my house in order to go see a nearly 3 hour movie that I was kind of in the middle on. But just first reactions is that we will have a director watch episode that ties into all this. I do believe Sophia will be on that episode with us to discuss it in full, in depth. And that's going to hopefully be out by next week, if not the week after. To give everybody some time to go and see it. But everybody will see Dune in theaters Friday, March 1st. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what, beyond the critical 90% hyperbole online, what it ends up becoming as well there too. All right, SAG winners. Let's talk about the SAG Awards, shall we? What an interesting night. The awards themselves presented on Netflix, streaming for the first time on the platform, streaming on the first time on a streamer. To be honest with you, one of the major award ceremonies, usually it's presented on TNT, TBS. They decided not to take it. So Netflix took over, and Erik, I'm going to kick it over to you because you're actually in LA right now, but you were not at the ceremony. You were watching it virtually like the rest of us. I just want your overall thoughts, and we're going to get everybody's overall thoughts on this ceremony that Netflix put together, because I'll just put my cards on the table. I thought it was a fucking mess. So what did you think, Erik?
Well, I'll start with the good stuff.
Oh man, you have to?
The Shrine Auditorium looked incredible, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I wish there were a little more vantage points of it so you could see more of the decor, because it was really beautiful. And Netflix has experimented with some live programming in the past, and some of it was not so successful. So I think they've worked out any of those kind of kinks, because in terms of a live stream presentation, it did great. But between, not having a host, but sort of with Idris Elba, it can be tough to have a lack of focus. But it's also a show that doesn't have a lot of fat on it. It's just awards. It's only for acting, and it just doesn't have, or maybe need, a lot more than that. So it's 2 hours is a really lean show. But this felt like 3 hours long, because every time they cut to Tan France doing his red carpet part 2 backstage with winners, it stopped everything absolutely dead. The momentum just crashed and burned. And it didn't make much sense either, because you have somebody win, there's some more awards, and then you get this cut and you get a winner doing an interview from like 4 awards back. So the pacing of it was really goofy and awkward. But I understand why. That's where commercials and stuff are going to go in once it's up and streaming, which should be now if you have the ad-supported version of Netflix, so that they can keep it at 2 hours. But it was like lead. It was terrible. The only good thing was a drunk Pedro Pascal just really kicking on that closet door just with 2 feet.
Yep. Sophia, your thoughts on the show? Are they kind of in line with Erik?
Yeah, they're pretty in line with Erik. I feel like it just dragged and the pacing was all over the place. I think those bits with Tan France interviewing the winners backstage just felt so off, and it just felt like obvious Queer Eye promo, which was just like, okay, here we go, Netflix like promoting one of their shows to the people who are watching this. And I also just remember that last year, in those slots where we would have had commercial breaks, they had little clip packages of like past award ceremonies, and those are the things that I prefer. Like I would rather them do something like that than have an interview it feels like a red carpet interview that's really delayed. So yeah, I felt like it was very bloated. The timing felt all over the place, but I was very grateful for Lily Gladstone's win in the end. I was really excited about that. I know we'll talk about that, but yeah, I don't know, because it's just acting. You're right. There's not a lot of fat really on it. And I also thought the timing of the beginning was weird, and the sound was also off. Like I couldn't quite tell like where the people didn't have the right mics. It just felt kind of strange. So overall, not a great award shows, but a few good winners here and there.
Josh, I want to ask you a couple things. One, we were hyped up with this giant Devil Wears Prada reunion. We're given a couple reunions on the television side as well, with Modern Family and Breaking Bad. And the ideas of those seem like good on paper, right, Josh? But it didn't feel like they executed them really well. And then I don't know, Josh, maybe my audio was bad, and I have pretty good audio at home. I don't know how it was for you. Did it feel like you couldn't hear any applause or any reactions in the audience for winners or for when the cast walked up on stage, because it almost felt very flat as a ceremony in general, right?
No, it did. And I should say that I actually didn't see all of the ceremony because
How dare you?
Well, I was traveling back from seeing Tenet. And
That's fair. You know what? That's a good excuse, Josh. I'll give you that.
So I missed like the first hour-ish of the ceremony, to be honest, which it doesn't sound like I missed that much. So, but yeah, from the bit that I did see, the audio was the big thing. And I almost thought like, is there a problem with my television? Because why can I like barely hear people? And it did seem very muted, like literally muted in the room. And that was a very weird thing to kind of navigate with that show. And yeah, strangely enough, it really does show you kind of the importance of the commercial break, honestly. I think that those are kind of necessary to give you a little pause and reset the show. And it does seem like on streaming, it's just in a very weird place. And I mean, normally just watch award shows for the awards anyway, but you do want to still be able to watch a good show. And it felt a little awkward. I'm hoping that maybe this is just first year. You're experimenting. Not everything's going to work. Hopefully, they'll work out the kinks later. But yeah, it's kind of a rough first go at it.
Well, I mean, they did also have. I mean, they had it on YouTube last year, right?
Yeah.
And it seemed to work pretty good, and it also seemed like a good idea. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of like. There were a lot of people complaining online of like, well, Netflix is going to have this now, so all the SAG winners are going to be Netflix, and that didn't happen at all.
Or Bradley Cooper.
Yes.
And Annette Bening.
Yeah, and Annette Bening. Yeah. And Carey Mulligan. Yeah. But good for Elizabeth Debicki, I guess, on the TV side, pulling a major upset there. Erik, I'm going to just kick it over to you real quick. We're going to start talking these winners here, and speak to at least the television side of things and the sort of the upsets, not particularly in comedy, because the comedy categories went completely for the Bear. Obviously, the limited series went completely for Beef, but we saw some, like you mentioned it, the Pedro Pascal win, and then a surprise in lead actors in a drama, Erik.
I don't know if Debicki was a total surprise. She was easily, one or two. But going through an entire 4 seasons of Succession and having them get 0 individual wins was definitely a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And since we had seen Beef and the Bear following the exact path that they had with Critics' Choice and the Emmys and the Globes, it just, we were looking at, another big sweepy award show, and that did not happen for Succession. So it was a bit of a surprise, but also really funny that Jeremy Strong decided not to show up because, why not?
Well, he didn't show up. Neither did Sarah Snook. Neither
They're
did
both
Brian
on
Cox.
stage right now.
Yeah, they're both on
Yeah,
stage.
I know she's doing Dorian Gray. I know.
Yeah, and Jeremy Strong wasn't at the Emmys either, so it's not like it's a controversy. He's working, and he wasn't going to win anyway because he wasn't nominated.
Well, he wasn't nominated.
Exactly.
So,
so it's like, why show up? And neither did Brian Cox. But no, I just thought that those were that was really interesting. It was also nice to see Alan Ruck go up there and accept the ensemble award as finally, Connor gets to have a moment in the sun, for that show. Okay. Movie side of things. Let's start talking about those. Well, we can talk about at least the first award that was given on the movie side of things, which is always, we never see this one actually given in person, but it was for outstanding performance by a stunt ensemble in a motion picture, and that went to Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. So congratulations, Erik, on being correct in stating that they still have an obsession with Tom Cruise and are going to give him those awards. Not too surprising, right, folks? No.
I mean,
I know people were predicting John Wick, but the fact that that was the first time it had ever been nominated by SAG for its stunt work, I just didn't think it was really going to happen.
Yeah. Erik, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, no, I think I predicted John Wick because it hadn't been nominated before. And since it's always at the forefront of everybody complaining that there's not a stunt Oscar category.
Yeah, that's fair.
I thought there was going to be a little bit more support behind it, but nope.
No, I think yeah, you might have changed your pick in the writing, but I know on the show last week you were saying about
maybe.
Mission Impossible. Yeah, a little bit of a change there. Sophia, Sophia, we're going to kick it over to you here then. Supporting actress. We're just going to get out. We're going to be getting out some brooms here today to talk about some of these things. But Da'Vine Joy Randolph continuing her dominance this entire season. She's maybe had the smallest of speed bumps with like a Rachel McAdams win here or there, but she has pretty much dominated this entire season. But it was a little frustrating again, wasn't it? Her speech, wouldn't you say?
I feel like with Da'Vine Joy Randolph, she is someone who I think before, just based on interviews and like of things I'd seen of her before, I did expect her speeches to be really fun and energetic throughout the season. And they haven't really been that. She tends to like bring up a paper and just kind of read from it, which is fine. I understand that like people get nervous and that, it's difficult in that moment. But at this point, I think like when you've won so many awards, I hope that for the Oscars she has a really good one. But I think the speeches are, it's also hard because she came right after Pedro Pascal won, and he had this like incredibly he was so surprised.
He's
it was
drunk.
Like a very organic reaction. He was drunk. I mean, his shirt was unbuttoned. He looked like he was on the cover of like an airport romance novel. But so I think it was just kind of a strong swing from one to the other. But I don't know. I think it doesn't bother me too much. I am just excited to see her continuing her sweep.
I am excited too. I just I don't know. I think that spontaneity a little bit, or the genuine shock, or I would love to see that a little bit more. I'm hoping for that at the Oscars, a little bit like put the speeches away and have a moment, you know what I mean, where this is a big deal. It's a big deal.
I feel like she probably will at the Oscars too, because or I'm hoping so, just because that is the big one. Like that's this is important because you're getting recognized by your peers, but the Oscars, that's the biggest thing you can really win.
Yeah. Josh, Erik, anything on this, or?
It's pretty much the same. I do feel like, whenever she pulls out that piece of paper, I'm like, okay, it just feels like the energy really isn't there, but it's hard to complain. I completely understand why she's doing it. I do hope that maybe for the Oscars, that being the last one, she'll forgo it, but it's kind of the same thing that we have been seeing, and I'm still happy for her. She's the best thing about that movie that I don't really like very much, but I'm very happy for her success.
For sure. Well, speaking of someone that's also been sweeping and pulled out a little bit of a speech himself, was Robert Downey Jr. And his win for Best Supporting Actor, pretty much sewing up another Oscar for Oppenheimer. Erik, your thoughts on Downey here? I know you were a little down on his speech from the BAFTAs and from other stuff as well too, but did you think he did a little bit better here, or I mean, obviously I think he has to have more of a speech than anybody else, maybe a written statement, because he can go off the beaten path, though it felt like at the beginning of it he did kind of go a little bit more wild and have a little fun with it, and then got to the written names down there. What did you think of Downey's overall win here in speech, Erik?
It was fine.
Okay. All right. Wonderful.
I mean,
wonderful analysis.
I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, it was wonderful analysis.
His whole opening with, why me? Why now? Has the air that kind of all of his speeches have had, which come off as pretty arrogant. It just does. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's a career win, it's a legacy win. But he also kind of knows that, and he's in on the joke of that in a lot of his speeches. And I think that's his "Why me, why now" really kind of underlines that. So in that sense, feeling like he's in on it makes his speeches make a little more sense. But when he does really kind of let that, jokey, snarky part slide and try and just be a little more real, then they're real. And he's thankful and grateful. And every time he talks about his wife Susan is very, very cool and honest. And I think, that's what people kind of want to hear. They don't want to hear, and maybe they do, Tony Stark give a speech about how fucking awesome he is. You know, they want to hear Robert Downey Jr. talk about that he came from a lot, rose meteorically, struggled immensely, cratered to the bottom in the most public way possible, and built himself back up, and Hollywood let him build himself back up. He's got one of those wonderful comeback stories, even though it feels like it's a long time ago, but it never feels like it's a part of his narrative. It's so weird. It's so strange how that has not played in, like, I mean, exactly like that.
Well, I think that his speech was actually one of the better ones that he had over the totality of the season. I thought that the self-deprecating joke about, I bet my fellow nominees are probably tired of hearing my name, but I can never get tired of it, which is a play out of his ego. Then, of course, doing a Nolan impression, which he's been doing on the circuit, which was, just really kind of like tempered, telling himself to kind of temper down, which is what Nolan has essentially told him to do this entire film and stretch run. But then I thought when he started naming all the names of all the people that had helped him, and you start remembering back, Erik, you've covered, you know his run, and most of us do know about his troubled past and everything, and all these people, particularly these actors, that gave him second chances, that gave him the chance to even be on that stage. And he mentioned a ton of them. And then, yes, obviously it culminated in really thanking his wife for putting up with this giant ego that's been, one of the biggest superstars on the planet. I wish with the names there was more maybe of like a story you're talking about there, Erik, with like, because he's such a, there was somebody like he mentioned, Jodie Foster. Foster was such a big part of one of the people for his comeback and still believing in him and everything. And he actually handed out her Cecil B. DeMille Award at the Golden Globes many years ago, and sat at the table with her. So, I wish there was a little bit more of that, but obviously this win, culmination of not just their love of Downey, but also the love of the film Oppenheimer as well too. Josh, Sophia, anything you want to add there to it?
Yeah, I do sometimes feel like the beginning of his speeches always feel a little smug to me, but I think that's kind of what you come to expect from the Downey persona a little bit. I think they were a little bit like looser, but I think at the Oscars, I feel like right now they kind of feel like media trained. Like he doesn't want to go too far off handle in some ways, but I feel like he's going to have a really good one when he inevitably wins at the Oscars, because like we were talking about sweeps, it's happening for him. I will say that when he mentioned his wife, it did remind me of one of my favorite moments from Daniel Day-Lewis's Oscar speech for Lincoln, when he thanked his wife, Rebecca Miller, for living with all of the characters that he's played over the years, all of the strange men. So that's the very nice thing I'll add about his speech. Which has nothing to do with Downey. Just made me think of something better.
Okay. All right.
But he does thank her in every speech, and with kind of that same tone. And yeah, I think this speech was just okay. To be honest, I feel like his speeches have actually kind of gotten worse as they've gone on. I really liked his Golden Globe speech. I thought that was kind of perfect for that ceremony and struck the right tone, and everything else has been a little tiresome to me. But I'm hoping that his strategy is he knows he has it in the bag. He doesn't really have to prepare too much for these. It's really the Oscars that is really going to matter. That's what I'm hoping for. And what I really want is him to say something about his dad. I feel like he's working up to that.
I feel like
I feel
that is going to be the big lead up when he. Yeah. There's no question. There's no way he doesn't. I mean, it's almost like when Jamie Lee Curtis not to say that they're the same quality, because I think Downey's performance is better than Jamie Lee Curtis, but she did have a moment where she acknowledged her parents up on the stage and got very emotional. And I think that, he's been in this business since he was a baby in his dad's movies. So he produced that documentary about his dad. Yeah. So I'm waiting for that moment to happen, and I feel like he's saving it for the Oscar. Yeah, I feel that shoe will drop in about 2 weeks. And if it doesn't, though, it would be very disappointing then at that point. Let's get over to lead actor, because I feel like this is where we were going in on the night. There were two choices. We had kind of talked about this and lead actress still being kind of wide open, and it looks like we might have solidified a front runner and potentially a winner in this category, as Cillian Murphy won the SAG Award for his role as J. Robert Oppenheimer over Paul Giamatti. And this is the Oscar 5. He's got now, outside the Critics' Choice, which he doesn't have, that went to Giamatti. He has the Golden Globe, the BAFTA, and the SAG Award. Erik, your thoughts on Murphy's win here?
It was fine. It's fine.
Fucking hell. All right. Josh, why don't you talk about Cillian Murphy's win?
No.
We'll go on to Josh.
No. Josh. Just because my opinion isn't as overflowing as yours doesn't mean it's not an opinion.
I mean, it's a big deal that he won this. You know.
Sure, but you're asking me. You're not asking him. You're asking me.
Okay.
It's a fine win. And I think in a thread from last night that I wrote in and you wrote in as well, that between Murphy and Gladstone, this is a pretty big shift in what the populace at large of this union gravitated to, which is so very often very, very big performances, especially a big biopic performance. And there were two right there with Annette Bening and Bradley Cooper that are like the big, massive, over the top, full of makeup type of traditional biopics. And even though Oppenheimer and Molly Burkhart are real people and they are biopics, they certainly both took a very different approach to them, both in presentation and their performance. So it's kind of great when a voting body allows itself to have diversity within their own choices instead of feeling so lockstep of like, okay, it's going to be Brendan Fraser as a whale. It's going to be Jessica Chastain as a fucking circus clown, you know?
Well, I was more asking, I wasn't asking about the performance itself, more about the win and its impact on this in everything here, because it is a huge win. I mean, it
You mean on the race?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about here.
But
you locked it up. You know,
you asked what I thought. You asked what I thought of the win, and I wanted to give it context for.
I got
the type of win.
I got you. I know that. I know that it's not your favorite performance. We all know that, Erik. But we clearly.
But that doesn't.
But we need to know what it means for the race, because it's a big deal for him to win this.
Yeah, he's going to win the Oscar. It's done. Now.
Okay, there we go. That's all I wanted to hear. That's all.
You weren't asking the right question.
Okay.
Now I'm like Jodie Foster, and you're like the twink detective, and I got to tell you to ask the right question.
That's right. All right, Josh. Overall, this win, it's been back and forth between people thinking that this would go to Paul Giamatti, and there was also late breakers that some people thought also too this could potentially be where Bradley Cooper could win as well, even though that movie has stumbled throughout the season. Thanks, Netflix. But it clearly showed the strength for not just Oppenheimer here on the night, but for this performance overall. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it here. I'm curious, Josh, from your perspective, and then also Sophia's here in a second. Biggest pendulum swing maybe in recent Oscar history of quality of win from Best Actor to from last year's debacle to this by the SAG Awards and by the
I'm
Oscars?
so glad you shared my pitched question.
You're welcome. I had to. I had to because you know, if we're going to talk about quality of wins around here, let's bring up last year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I would prefer not to dwell.
We don't have to, Josh.
On that. We
You know?
we don't. Yeah, we could just move past that. But yeah, I mean, I know that there was a back and forth for sure, but I also feel like that was probably just us wanting a race, more so than a race that it really was. And I think Cillian probably was always out in front just because of the strength of that movie, which, you know, I'm happy about. Personally, for me, he is my favorite of the category. I am really glad that a performance that, you know, that inhabits more of the subtler side of things is actually looking like the big front runner. And yeah, I think that this pretty much seals the deal for him. Globe, SAG, and BAFTA, like I don't care that he doesn't have the Critics' Choice. Like those three mean so much more. And considering the strength of the movie overall, yeah, he's getting pushed into the win category, which is great. It's a great performance.
Yep. Sophia, biggest pendulum swing ever in quality of win.
I mean, for me, it's definitely up there. We all know how I felt about the pepperoni pizza from Gambino's with the ranch dressing performance, but
all those Milky Ways inside the cabinet, inside the drawer. Right?
Yeah.
Did you know that people are amazing?
People are amazing.
Josh,
Yeah.
thank you for telling me that. I did not know that until you just said it. Thank you very much, Josh.
I know.
That's why we have you on the show.
Yeah.
Josh, you and I and our collective suffering together over the whale.
It was not a good night.
No. But no, I love Cillian Murphy here. I think that it really is, though, Erik is right, when you look at SAG and what they traditionally go for, and we'll definitely talk about that with actress too. It's not a performance like what Cillian Murphy does here. It's very different. So I was kind of hoping for Bradley Cooper to win, just to kind of throw a wrench in things and see maybe like this would be his place where he could win something, but I'm happy with Murphy winning, and I think it will be a good Best Actor win at the Oscars. And that category, if we look historically, is
bleak.
It is all over the place. We have some of my favorite performances that I've ever seen to abysmal entries. So I'm glad we'll have a good winner to add to the list.
I think we'll have a very great winner.
Yeah.
I think we would have if it was him or Bradley. I really do love Bradley Cooper's performance in Maestro. I don't understand. I don't, too. And I do love Giamatti. I do feel though we would have been in good hands either way. It's definitely an improvement from last year. But I do like Wright and Domingo. It's a very, very good lineup of
all good performances. Honestly,
all good performances here. But go back to what you were saying, Josh. The totality of how much love that Oppenheimer has gained and virtually swept in this season. It is the movie of the award season. It is the movie that everybody loves. It's the undeniable winner. It is the popular choice. And it just didn't make sense. It wasn't making a lot of sense when we were all talking about how well if this movie is winning all these Oscars, right? Like we said last year, it doesn't make a lot of sense if Michelle Yeoh doesn't win for everything everywhere all at once. It doesn't make a lot of sense if Cillian Murphy doesn't win since he's on frame for a majority of this movie, and he is the titular character. You know what I mean? So it's very, and now we've seen it happen a ton of times in Oscars history for sure. But it didn't feel right here for this movie in particular, and everything. But you know, winning that BAFTA and SAG, seeing the industry love clearly, and also too for a guy that's very quiet and very soft spoken, not just in his own personal life, to be out here and do everything on the campaign trail with Downey and with Blunt, really doing the heavy lifting for this ensemble. It's no surprise then why it then ultimately won SAG Ensemble here and beat the rest of the competition, other than just being the really strong film, right? Those three had really been the ones interviewing the entire time over the last 3 or 4 weeks together, doing a lot of Q&As, doing a lot of press. They were just recently on Jimmy Kimmel the other night together as well too. They have been everywhere and they have been consistent in it. So we're not I mean, I did predict Barbie going into it. I thought that, sort of the populace would want to give something to them, because we have seen popular winners like there before. Like we saw, they highlighted Black Panther and other wins like this before. But it just seems though, when you have an undeniable film, we should have just known all along it was Oppenheimer, right, guys? Like, it's SAG ensemble win is not too surprising, and it ultimately just shut the case on everything in terms of, well, it might not win Best Picture because if American Fiction or Barbie or something else wins SAG ensemble other than Color Purple here, we're having a 2-week conversation, right, about, well, does it have a shot to win picture and beat Oppenheimer because it won SAG ensemble? But clearly Oppenheimer won that, right?
No, yeah. I mean, and Oppenheimer is not like those other kinds of movies that tend to be looked at as like the Best Picture frontrunner that's maybe more director driven and the acting is pushed to the side. Like, no, this movie has a ton of people in it and people like that cast. So, and when the movie was as strong as it was, it just ultimately felt like, yeah, it's going to win ensemble as well. People look at that movie, you can look at it as like both a showcase for one particular performance, but also a celebration of the whole ensemble, which is like kind of perfect for your SAG winner.
Yeah. Erik, what were you? Oh, Sophia, go right ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, I think for a long time, it didn't make sense as a winner, honestly, in the category for me, just because, like, if Oppenheimer was going to miss something big, and I'm talking months ago, I'm not talking like last week, but if Oppenheimer was going to lose one of the big ones, it was never going to be DGA or PGA or anything like that. It was going to be here, because usually they go for really diverse casts here. Like, we just see like an American Fiction win would have made sense here, or a Barbie win would have made sense here, is something I think that, celebrates those sorts of themes within the movie and in its cast. And Oppenheimer doesn't have that or do that. So I think that was why for a while I thought, okay, maybe Oppenheimer doesn't make sense as a winner here. But as we got going throughout the season, Oppenheimer's cast was the cast that people were gravitating towards in every room, it seemed like. And they were the cast that people wanted to spend time with at awards shows and at different parties and things like that. Them, really, and Messi, who plays Snoop in Anatomy of a Fall. But
yeah, he's not nominated,
so I think,
though.
But he's not nominated here. We don't have the pet category. But yeah, so I think it just makes sense that now Oppenheimer is just going to take everything.
Erik, win here and everything. I'm not too surprising, obviously. I think did you end up predicting it, or did you?
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Okay. Not too surprising of a win. I mean,
no.
But in terms of the totality of the season, like Sophia's saying, a couple months ago, we didn't think that this would probably be the case for it, but it just shows how the season progresses, right? And it just showing the dominance of Oppenheimer here with this win, right?
Yeah, definitely. White people are back. So it really just overpowered the traditional SAG ensemble narratives, and just white powered its way right through to the top.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I see what you're trying to do there. Okay.
I'm just trying to rile your feathers, Ryan.
Well, I think that it over the last couple of years, we've had some pretty poorish wins in SAG ensemble, and pretty just not wins that I would consider to also fit the definition of best ensemble of the year. And Oppenheimer definitely does have one of the best ensembles of the year. I mean, hell, half of the great performances that we love so much from that movie weren't even eligible because of the SAG rules. I found out that Krumholtz was a +1 for somebody else. He wasn't even invited by SAG as part of the ensemble, as well as
and then he quit Twitter.
And then he quit Twitter. Yeah, it was Barry Keoghan. He did it. All those tweets about Barry Keoghan finally caught up with them. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't a fan of who they selected to make the speech for the group. I thought that would have been a great chance for Emily Blunt to go up there maybe and make a speech, or
Hard pass on that.
Josh Hartnett or Alden Ehrenreich or somebody else. But yeah, and just weirdly enough, why Matt Damon was not a part of this Oscar campaign all season just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. Every time they showed a clip of Oppenheimer and he's got that, it's the most important thing in the fucking world, sort of speech. I'm like, this is a performance they usually go apeshit for as the Academy. But I do agree with you, going back to something you were saying, though, Erik, earlier about Best Actor, just real quick, was the idea of that, this year breaks the mold of and sorry, this is another thing to Bradley Cooper, but showing the photo a year in advance and the makeup work and everything there that's involved. I mean, the sort of the year up anticipation, the year long Oscar campaign that kind of got broken this year because Brendan Fraser had that last year. But yeah, it was not surprising that it won. But there was a surprise, and it was a very welcome surprise. And now Josh Parham is sweating from head to toe, trying to figure out he's going to pick the next 2 weeks, because we got a race in Best Actress. Erik, talk a little bit about Lily Gladstone, not just her speech, but this win here and what it means for the race.
I mean, just, looking at it analytically and purely from data, it's a pretty cool race now, because they've split the precursor wins, 2 of which are non-industry, 2 of which are, and they each have one. They're both in films with 10 or more nominations, and Best Picture and Best Director. They're both very, very strong films. So it isn't like Lily Gladstone is out on an island by herself, hoping to win Best Actress as a result. Mm-hmm. She's in her film, and not in the same way that Emma Stone is in hers in terms of time. But I don't think that really matters. I think people are definitely now trying to parse the she doesn't have enough screen time to win Best Actress thing. And I think you kind of lose the thread once you're really kind of doing that. And we did that for months and months and months already. And here we are. So the argument that she doesn't have enough screen time is not a valid argument, because here we are. She won SAG, which could have very easily gone to Stone. I waffled back and forth. I landed on Stone. All season long, has been mostly Gladstone since May, with a brief flirt with Annette Bening. I had number one for 1 month.
He had a little cold one week and decided to do a water plunge and
a little bit. And I had actually been really cold on Poor Things, and took a very long time to get it up in top categories, like really long time. And it did seem like momentum had sort of shifted to Stone, but really both of them, both Gladstone and Emma Stone, have both been all over the place, doing every show and photo shoot and thing that they need to do. Gladstone's Vanity Fair Hollywood issue cover is stunning.
She's gorgeous.
And even though it's not something that she talks about in every interview, and even gets talked about in the context of her wins, she's also an openly queer woman. So she's got so much in her pocket that's going to give her historical status.
Yeah.
And, to naysayers that say vote for the performance and not for the narrative, I don't know, go fuck yourself. That's is the easiest way I can say that, because the performance is there as well.
It's a beautiful performance.
Everything on the outside is the extra stuff that are great additives and great additions to the history of a win. Like Michelle Yeoh last year. That doesn't mean the performance wasn't there. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also, and Sophia, I'll ask you here, is like, does that stuff even, like, not the historical, stuff, but like the time and how much she's in the film and everything. that feels like online conversations. It doesn't, like you're saying, Erik, it doesn't really matter because this is one of the most celebrated performances of the year. This is, people could say a lot about Killers of the Flower Moon, but there is one undeniable thing, and it's so undeniable that all the other actresses that were there stood up and applauded, and were so excited to see Lily Gladstone win, including Emma Stone. She had the biggest reaction to Gladstone's win last night. And so, Sophia, I know you spoke with Lily Gladstone earlier this year. I know this is one of your favorite performances of the year. What did you think of her win here? But also, what did you think of her speech in general, too?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard when you interview someone because it's impossible sort of not to root for them if you have a good experience talking to them. And Lily Gladstone is just, she's so humble. She's so warm. There's just so much to her as a person that you just, for me, like the Oscars, when I look at them throughout history, sometimes they really don't matter and sometimes they really do. And I feel like this is a case, not just because of her narrative, but also because of the performance that this win would really, really matter. And it's one of the reasons why I've really just like fixated on wanting her to win, really. But for SAG to go for this performance and not Emma Stone is a huge deal, I think, to me, because like I just always kind of thought Emma Stone would win here just because that performance is so physical. It can lean into over the top depending on who you talk to, and it's more of what they tend to look at. But for Lily Gladstone, like it's for winning for a very subtle performance in a 3-hour plus movie that feels like they wanted to say something too, and they really, wanted to get behind her. And I feel like it's just such a great win. And I think, she got a huge standing ovation when you saw her go up to that stage. People in that room were thrilled for her, and not everyone got those standing ovations. So it did I tracked that. I was trying to listen to the applause too, but the audio was just not
bad audio,
not so hot.
Bad audio.
But the standing ovation, I noticed that. And then I think her getting up on stage and the way that she starts all of her speeches, and I think there's just an overwhelming sense of calm to her. And what she said also about unions and the strike, I felt was really, really necessary.
The only one that mentioned it until Brana also mentioned it in the ensemble piece, but none of the other winners did mention that.
Yeah. Right. And on Branagh for a minute, that I am not a fan of Kenneth Branagh for many reasons, but I did think I thought he gave a really good speech for Oppenheimer. I felt like it made sense why they picked him, sort of.
Very responsible dad, really adult.
Yeah, absolutely. But so credit where credit is due. But yeah, I thought she had a good speech. You could tell she was very overwhelmed and very moved to receive that award, especially from that group. And it's coming at the right time. I think that momentum is everything. And I know we said that last year. I don't think, and there are a lot of comparisons going on right now to Cate Blanchett and Michelle Yeoh last year. And I don't think this is that race. I want to make sure everyone knows that, like, this is not the same race as that. It's also not the same race as Adrian Brody for The Pianist with Sandra Hüller. Like, we're not even getting there either. I've seen a lot of that happening.
That's done.
This is its own thing.
Erik made that abundantly clear last night, didn't you, Erik? Where you were like, you're muted, by the way, Erik. It's like the Sandra Hüller thing, it's just, we got to stop, right?
Oh my God, the Sandra Hüller thing. People are crazy. I love her. I love her performance, and I think she should win of that lineup. But be real, please be real, and stop being like crazy pants. If you want to have fun and be like, hey, this could be like so cool, but there are people that are like very serious about it, and I just need them to stop.
I mean, I get the idea because Anatomy is surging and it looks like it could potentially be our original screenplay winner. I get the urge to do it, but again, BAFTA, which went overwhelmingly big for that movie in nominations, went for Emma Stone. She did not get into SAG. She did not win Critics' Choice. She did not win the Globe when the Globes decided to award it 2 Globes, including screenplay on the night. There has been enough evidence to suggest that Sandra Hüller's win was the nomination, and that's okay. That is okay, and it's a phenomenal performance. She just won a César Award. She is going to do just fine. You know what I mean? But
Love the
Mhm.
Césars.
there's one person we haven't heard from yet. And it really is the only one that matters around here. And that's Josh Parham, who has just probably have to, in the last less than 24 hours, been biting his nails left and right because his predictions are the ones that everybody cares about the most. And he is the best actress guru. Everybody goes to Josh's picks and how the wind is flowing. This is how we do it, Josh. So last night's win, how big was it? And where do you sit right now? I mean, it's not your final. I'm not asking for a final prediction or anything, Josh, but how do you feel now with this win?
Yeah, I have very mixed emotions right now. I literally yelled when she won for multiple reasons. I love Lily Gladstone in that movie, and I think that she should win. It's an incredible performance, and I'm glad that a group like SAG did go for her because I do think that, yeah, that's not really a performance that you would think a voting body like that would go for, although they do like narratives for performers too. So it definitely made sense. But yes, it also now complicates this. This race is really the only acting category now that has any kind of mystery to it, I think. And this win comes at the very correct moment. Voting is happening. It's a signal for momentum for her, for sure. It's not decided, though. I think Emma Stone could easily still win because I think at the end of the day, Poor Things is a stronger movie in the Oscar race than Killers of the Flower Moon. It's really just all on Lily for that film, and there's other opportunities for Poor Things to win in other places, which I think is just a signal of strength. So yeah, I think that this is going to come down to the wire. I had been with Lily for a while, but then the stalling of momentum for Killers really was starting to worry me for a bit, and then I kind of relented that, oh, maybe it is just going to be Emma Stone. But then this throws Lily Gladstone back into the race. And yeah, the fact that she was the only one that got such a huge standing ovation, I did notice as well. So yeah, I don't know. I was really hoping for an easy year, but
We
not
can't
gonna
make it too
happen.
easy on you, Josh.
No,
That would make your life easy and simple. But I
yeah.
do want to go
So
back to something that Kevin pointed out a couple of weeks ago. He pointed out to the people that this season that we want to meet, we want to talk to, that people gravitate towards. And I think back to a couple of weeks ago, Erik, when we were at an event for Killers of the Flower Moon, and Leo was there, De Niro was there, Scorsese was there, but that room revolved around Lily Gladstone. And from that ovation in the room last night, it did feel as if that, there is love for her immensely in that performance, regardless of what people think of that movie. And between the love of them and then also the love for the Oppen homies, those seem to be the ones that people have gravitated towards the most, and have all the momentum as well with Da'Vine Joy Randolph here for these Oscar categories in the final voting, because the final voting is what, the next until the 27th, right, Erik, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so I mean, Gladstone's win is the only one to fall under the voting period.
Yeah. And is huge, but like they were saying, this is like Josh and Sophia were saying, Erik, it's a hugely different race because last year Michelle Yeoh was in the Best Picture winner. Neither one of these actresses are in the Best Picture winner, but to Josh's point, Poor Things is stronger in below the line categories, but how much that matters also too. It might not. It might just mean that it's strong in those categories, and Lily Gladstone's our winner as well. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
it could go either way.
Yeah.
It really could. I don't think people who want to say like, oh, Lily won this and therefore she's got the momentum and now it's all hers. Like, no, like that is not that easy. It could still easily go to Emma Stone. We just now know that there is enough support for Gladstone to push her through. I think that this is going to be down to the wire.
Yeah. It's one of the few categories left that are down to the wire. And it'll be really interesting. We'll all be on the edge of our seats in just a couple of weeks here talking about the Oscars. And speaking of which, next week on the show we're going to be giving our final predictions. It's going to be exciting. any categories right now that you're still completely on the fence about? Josh, I don't think you'll be on that show with us, but is there outside of actress, obviously, are there other categories that you're particularly still on the fence about, nervous about before we head into final predictions?
Oh, visual effects.
Visual
That
effects
to me is the hardest category to get this year. And it's funny because usually that's the one that is the easiest because we just have a big, obvious winner that, you know exactly what's going to happen. But I think that category is so up in the air. And it's the only one where I could honestly see a scenario where anyone wins. So that's the one I'm going to be really nervous about right up until the envelope is opened.
Yeah, for sure. Sophia?
Yeah, it's visual effects for me as well.
Okay.
That's one where it's like, usually, I mean, the other categories I'm up in the air on it's like between 2 movies, and that's really between more than 2, so that's the tricky part. And then I always, shorts. The short always challenging. My rule of thumb there is the one I like the least. That's usually
Yeah, there you go. Erik?
I think animated short, particularly, you're going to have good success.
The war is over.
The war is fucking over. I'll tell you that. Erik?
I'm not sure visual effects is that more assured after the Visual Effects Society went for Naiad instead of Napoleon, which would have been a very easy choice to do.
Just keep swimming.
I feel pretty comfortable in visual effects, but then, I say that and I'll be wrong. I still think there is a lot of play in adapted screenplay, although American Fiction winning as its only win makes total perfect sense in the history of the Oscars. But I think documentary short is where I am going to struggle the most because there are 3 films. Really, all 5 are, I think, extremely competitive. But the ABCs of book banning, The Last Repair Shop, and 99 Wipo are definitely the top 3. And they're all playing a really good and hard game that you don't really see in this category very much. So there's a lot of money being thrown around for all 3 of those films, lots of appearances. The Last Repair Shop here just got a like $15 million influx funding for this repair shop that is the focus of the movie, and it's just like, oh my god, that is Disney putting in the work.
Yeah.
And Disney also has 99 Wipo, so they're trying to balance those out. But that's a race that I think is going to be right to the envelope.
Yeah, I agree with you on adapted a little bit because yes, I understand American Fiction and everything, but we again have not seen Barbie have votes inside this field at all until now. I don't know how much that affects it. I don't know how much of SAG Ensemble win and the particular sweep and love for Oppenheimer plays also into a down balloting voting for that, and that ultimately wins adapted screenplay as well, along with its haul. Like, that's something to consider as well. I still think I know this might be a little bit of, just wishful thinking, and maybe we'll talk about this more next week. Costume design and production design, I don't particularly think it could be sewn up, but it could also still be either a Poor Things or Barbie Things. So it could potentially be a coin flip there. You never know. Especially when you get into the full Academy. But yeah, visual effects. What a fucking crapshoot. And so we'll talk about that all next week. It should be really fascinating, and it definitely won't be nerve-wracking at all to have to predict all these and put it on the line as well. Josh Parham, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet, my friend?
You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at JR Parham, and you can find my work on Next Best Picture and AwardsWatch. And
Josh is I'm going to be texting Josh every other day to be like, "What's it at? What's the barometer app?" right before we record.
You and everybody else.
I know, man. You have to start charging for these consultations. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Sophia, same.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Sophia_Sim. You can find me on Letterboxd, same handle without the underscore. You can find my podcast, Oscar Wilde, at Oscar Wilde Pod. We've been doing a contender series this year. We've been going through every single category, sharing who we think should win, our write-in votes, technical aspects. It's been very fun, but I'm very excited to put this season to bed because it is a lot of work. But you can check those episodes out, almost finished there. And you can find my reviews and interviews from this season at AwardsWatch.
Yep. Go over to the website, find her interview with Lily Gladstone. It's a phenomenal interview, one of the best interviews out there that anybody's talked to Lily with this season.
Thank you.
Erik Anderson, where can we find you?
You can find me at awardswatch.com. Right as we're recording this, I'm about to head to the Spirit Awards, and
Gonna jump off the pier.
We'll see how that goes. I think Past Lives is going to do really well, but obviously I'm pulling for All of Us Strangers as well. PGAs are later tonight, which is just going to be a countdown to Oppenheimer winning at like 10 or 10:30.
Hell yeah.
And then tomorrow, or today, I guess if you're listening to this, the Gallica Dorian Awards winners will be out with some interesting wins.
Very interesting wins. Saw those last night. Nobody thinks, by the way, when we get to PGA, it's nothing but Oppenheimer. It's all Oppenheimer tonight at PGA. There's no other outside up possibility, correct?
There's an almost 0% chance that it will lose.
Almost zero. I like it. There you go.
That's
Good
not
call.
the race to look for. Animated features the race that you want to pay attention to at a
it's
PGA.
very much so. Because
but that should be Spider-Man.
I still think so. But
Yeah.
if you want to have the hope of Boy and the Heron, you have to really look at PGA for that, I think.
Correct. Because if Boy and the Heron wins, look out there. That's Miyazaki's second win.
Yeah, but if it doesn't, it'll have like zero guilt support. And I don't know if I can support predicting that movie to win then.
Yeah, it'll just have the BAFTA, right?
Well, have BAFTA and Globe, but I mean, it's not even up at like the Editors Guild.
Yeah.
So. No, it's not. It doesn't have an ace. It was not very, very popular with other guilds the way that Spider-Man was. So
yeah,
just seems rude. That's all. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Ryan McQuade 77. You can find all my work at awardswatch.com, including a great interview with the maybe potential Best Actor winner, Cillian Murphy. Just putting that out there. You can listen to all of our podcasts. Our podcast right now, this was released every Monday. On Thursdays, of course, is the Director Watch podcast. And this week, we're talking about William Friedkin's The Hunted. Fucking awesome movie. I hope you all listen to that. Go watch that. That movie rules. And iTunes, Spotify, 5 stars. Also go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. Erik puts that together twice a week. It's great stuff. That's where you can get all our news, reviews, interviews, and podcasts all in one place sent to you. Next week, we will be back and we will be giving our final Oscar predictions. And then we'll be back after that, wrapping up this season, and then it'll be all done. Well, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.